Welcome, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
Hello, everybody.
Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. We broadcast live and we broadcast on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley in BC from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation.
We should try it as a mime show one night, as opposed to a talk show. Do a mime.
I don't know what
You're speechless.
yeah, you rendered me speechless. It almost became a mime. Anyway, so I should also do the rest of my intro to the show.
Okay, why don't you do that?
Just to say that Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality. Every week we talk about a different topic under that umbrella. And it's a radio show and a podcast. So on the one hand, we've got a local radio show, but on the other hand, you can catch the show across all podcasting platforms and on my website at drlesliephillips.com/category podcast. And we live stream on our Facebook group, the Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group. And we also live stream on my YouTube channel. And those last two ways are fantastic because that's how you get to be in the chat room of the radio show. That's how you get to get the information ahead of the broadcast date and to actually participate in the show live by posting your comments and by posting your questions. Now, this last few months, since the middle of the year, we've been doing a series, and the series is about intuition and chakras. And so far, we've done, I don't even know if I can count how many shows, but we've been through all of the chakras, from the first chakra to the seventh chakra, and we have talked about all of the different psychic abilities that are channeled through those chakras. So we talked about survival instinct in the first chakra, clairsentience and the second chakra. We talked about out-of-body experience, out-of-body memory, and energy distribution, and the third chakra. We talked about affinity and oneness in the fourth chakra. We talked about clairaudience, inner voice, broad and narrowband telepathy, and pragmatic intuition in the fifth chakra. And more recently, we talked about abstract intuition and clairvoyance, which are aspects of the sixth chakra. And we also did claircognizance or knowingness and transmediumship, which are aspects of the crown chakra. But just because we've been through the chakra system that way, that doesn't mean we're finished, because that's not all, folks. In order to talk about them, we kind of have to break them down into individual chunks, don't we? And yet your intuitive system it acts as a whole. It acts as an integrated system. And there are certain psychic abilities that are not drawing on just one chakra. They actually relate to the use of multiple chakras operating together. And so that is where we are going to go next with this series on intuition and chakras, which, by the way, is it's kind of in celebration of my book that came out this year, which is called Intuition and Chakras. So I don't know how many of you listening have a copy of the book. Be interesting to know who in the chat room has a copy of Intuition and Chakras, because this is a really great opportunity to follow along.
I do.
You have a copy, don't you? And I know from time to time people who are listening write and say that they have the book. And so, yeah, so that's wonderful. And thank you for the support of everyone who has purchased a copy of the book. Now, I was rereading what I wrote about precognition before coming on the show. And out of everything that I've written in the book, I think that that's one, not that I would necessarily rewrite, but I would actually add some additional information to. And I'll explain why. So first of all, let's say, what is precognition? Precognition is the ability to perceive future time events. So it's, in a way, we might say it's the ability to look into the future. So it is the psychic ability that most people think about when they think about someone who's psychic. Are they going to tell me my future? I want them to tell me my future. And there's a long tradition of people doing that. You know, there's a long tradition of fortune tellers and fortune telling. and so, but to my way of thinking, that well, let me explain my perspective on precognition. And there's two places I would go with this, and one's a bit more thoroughly explained in the book, and one perhaps isn't. Precognition is one of the most scientifically studied of the psychic abilities. There's been a lot of studies, and they've discovered that most people have had the experience of having a premonition. And of those most people who've had the experience of having a premonition, most of them have that premonition through a dream experience. So most people alive today have had a precognitive dream of some sort, and depending on the study, it's 60 to 95% of people. So that's a lot of people. So I'm interested to know if those people in the chat room who are listening have had a precognitive dream, or even a waking vision of a future time event. And there's lots of examples in the book, and I'll probably read some of them in a moment. But for some reason, I'm looking at my Facebook feed, and I don't want to, because I can see that there's questions coming through, and I want to finish explaining about precognition. Yeah, so what's happening in a precognitive dream? What's happening in a precognitive dream is, and we've talked about this when we talked about out-of-body experience. When you're dreaming, you are out of the body. And when you're out of the body, you are venturing outside of time and space. And so when you're outside of time and space, it's possible for you to explore future and past time events, not only current present time events. And so that's what happens with a precognitive dream. You've been outside of the body, you've moved beyond the limits of time and space that we ordinarily experience when we're in the body, and you've tapped into a potential future event. And actually, that's what deja vu is. When you get that feeling like, oh, I think this has happened before, it's because you were already in that event before experiencing it through your waking consciousness. So in the book, I've written at length about precognitive dreams, and I will share some examples from my own life and other people's lives that are in the book as well. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that how can you access that information when you're not asleep, right? And this is where the sixth, and working together, learning how to master your sixth and seventh chakra, how to focus your sixth and seventh chakra so that you can tune into potential future events. And notice I say potential future events, because from our perspective, when we're in the body, all that exists is now. The future hasn't happened yet. The future is a probability cloud. The future is the quantum field where basically everything, all possible combinations of events and experiences exist in the quantum field. And then by our energy, our thoughts, our actions, and who we are, in these electromagnetic vehicles in our bodies, then that's what steers the ship to make this future potential more likely or that future potential more likely. So that's why when a psychic reader predicts the future for you, sometimes they can be correct and sometimes maybe not so correct. And it's because maybe at the time they read you, they were tuning into the most probable future event, but then you went away and something changed. Something changed that made a different future event be more likely. So that's why if I'm ever doing a future time reading, which I rarely do, because for various reasons, which if anyone wants to ask me about, I don't mind explaining, but I'd always put a percentage probability or a percentage likelihood. Like, you know, if you insist and you really want me to look into your future, well, this is what I see being most likely. And there's a 60% chance that that's what's going to happen. But there's also a chance that it won't. Looks like Corey's got his hand up for a word in edgeways.
No, I want to go to the washroom. Um, I have a couple of things from Mirembe. And the first is a question, and also she has a question for you a little later, Dr. Leslie, and that's how do I unlock my life purpose? But her question right now is, or comment was, I was traveling and experienced an image of beautiful White House flush across my eyes. I was fully awake, wondered what it is and why. It surely wasn't a dream. So I think she's
Right.
wondering if that's a premonition or.
Well, here's the thing about premonitions. Mostly you don't really know it's a premonition until after it's happened. And then you can say, oh, that's what that was. I remember in my early days, I used to keep a dream diary, and I had many premonitions. One of them was of an airliner crashing into a high-rise building, and it wasn't 9/11. It was way before 9/11 when an aircraft crashed into a high-rise building in Holland. And in that image, two of my friends that lived in Holland were standing in the foreground in that vision, and a tower block was in flames, and there was the silhouette of an airplane. Now, I woke up, and that was a very impressionable vision, but it wasn't until 2 days later when that actually happened that I was like, oh, that's what that was. So when it comes to Mirembe's waking vision, I guess in one sense we could say time will tell. In another sense, what I want to say is treat that as a symbol. So what does that big white house mean to you? If you were to just treat it as a symbol showing up in your life, as though you'd pulled a tarot card or something, what does it mean to you? Does it mean success? Does it mean dreams fulfilled? Does it mean, it's like, is it like any White House you've ever seen before? What does it remind you of? What was the emotion you had when you had that waking vision? Because I think the explanation for what it means to you lies within you. So I would treat it as a dream symbol, even though it wasn't. And I would interpret it that way. So what does a big white house mean to you? What was your main emotion when you had that waking vision of the big white house? So what connections can you make to that? All right.
There's a lot of, looks like dreams. As soon as you start talking about dreams, everybody just starts pounding in questions about dreams.
Yeah.
The question on chat that you sent me, Dr. Leslie, was that from Anne?
No, it's from George.
That was George's question. Okay.
Yeah. He
So
posted it earlier in the Facebook group.
yeah, Anne did as well. So I can't access that right now. So Anne, if you could throw that down there again, that would be great.
And I see Mirembe has told us that that house represents happiness.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a wish fulfillment vision, that seeing that symbol of that white house, if you think of it, maybe it uplifts your vibration into a vibration of happiness and makes it more likely that what you're going to create for yourself in the future is happiness.
Yeah.
So it's a symbol of happiness.
So
And it's
Danielle,
changing your vibration and allowing you to change your reality potentially.
says, yes, confirming precognitive dreams about my kids and the death of their dad. Ooh.
Oh, wow.
Also, she says, as I do also out of body experiences too, being able to control my dreams. By this, I mean I could decide what I want to dream about. For me, it was always about visiting places.
Cool. Thank you for sharing.
And Curious Soul, I always want to call him Curious George. Curious Soul says, how to make my dreams clearer, talking about their dreams that tell me about the near future events.
So his question
Clarity.
is how to make his dreams clearer.
Yeah.
Well, that really it. We did a whole episode on this, but it comes down to practice, really, intention, focus, and practice. So, uh, learning techniques to become lucid in your dreams, and also learning techniques and things that you can do to help you remember your dreams when you wake up, because there's a difference between the out of body experience and the out of body memory. The out of body experience is an infinite playground. The in body experience is a finite playground. And so you don't bring all of your out of body experience into the body. It's not possible for you to do that. And so, that's why we sometimes remember our dreams and we sometimes don't. But there are things that you can do, um, energy practices and so on, that can help you to retrieve that dream information.
Now
All
it's time,
right,
Dr. Leslie.
it's time for a break.
That was like
Boom. All
gone.
right. So you're listening to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey. Tonight's episode's about precognition, actually, and we'll be back after these messages.
Okay.
Welcome back, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey. Tonight's episode of Unlocking Your Truth is about precognition. And before the break, we were talking about how we get premonitions and how sometimes it's possible for, or more common for us, to have premonitions from our dreams, but how it's also possible to dial into future events by consciously mastering and using your sixth and seventh chakra. We're also talking about how, in a way, the nature of our reality is ultimately everything exists. Everything that you can conceive of or you can't conceive of, it exists. And you're basically navigating through this huge quantum field of reality from one event or experience to another based on your energy, your beliefs, your vibration. So if somebody were to predict your future for you, it might happen and it might not happen. And why might it not happen? It's not that they're wrong. They may have accurately read you in the moment that they read you, but your energy shifted in some way, and that led to a different trajectory. So, in some senses, it's slightly tricky to be able to. Somebody says they dreamed about me last night. I had somebody else tell me that this week, that I showed up in their dream.
I dream about you, sweetie, all the
Do
time.
you?
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I don't know. I think things are heating up on the astral plane because things are heating up here on our planet. So it's very busy out there. All right. So I was,
I see.
I
I
don't
see who.
know, Dan, what
I
that means.
I see who it was. Dan. Dan.
So
Dan. Dan.
I always like to read a passage from the book.
We have
And
lots of questions for you too,
do
Dr.
you,
Leslie.
so I could skip doing reading the book and answer the
For
questions
a
if you
couple of
like.
moments, if you want.
Pardon?
For a couple of moments.
Sure.
So we talked about Danielle as her OB. Curious Soul we did, and Danielle again question. Danielle says a question: any insights about tomorrow's portal of 1111?
I haven't looked at that, Danielle. I guess I could look at that. Um, and I think to some degree, these things are what you want to make them into for yourself. If that's a significant symbolic thing for you, then you can use that as a portal or an entry point for, whatever purpose you're wanting to use it for. I will tune in and see. Um,
Tomorrow is
Remembrance Day as well.
Kamini Barber's birthday,
Hmm.
and she's trying to awaken her clairs. Go ahead. Sorry, Dr. Leslie.
Well, no, I think that I kind of said my read on that, that it's, if you want to make that into an event with meaning for you, and something that gives you permission to make a change or have a transformation, then that's fantastic. And I'm seeing that that looks like what some people are doing with that
Yeah,
1111.
yeah. Always awesome numbers, right?
Mm,
Auspicious numbers.
master number.
Yeah. So we have another question from Marimbe, and I'll see if her question's next or not. No, Letitia's question's next, and Letitia's question is, what is a good exercise to improve precognition? Learn how to pronounce it for me.
So I would say start with the basics. So, and the basics is just even learning how to bring your conscious awareness into the sixth and seventh chakra. So, there is a free download, or some of you probably know, on my website, which teaches you to ground and center. I would start with that. Start by mastering your sixth chakra, by learning how to seat your consciousness in the center of your head and actually use your clairvoyance. And then from there are energy techniques that I could teach you that relate to how to focus um, on using that to look at future time events. But that's not really something that I would explain on the radio show, because you need certain foundation of information before you would go there, at least in the structure of how I teach you to open your psychic abilities. So I would recommend starting with your sixth chakra and learning about that and developing some confidence in your clairvoyance, and then you can take it to the next level.
Letitia says she's been working on grounding and centering. She loves it.
That's great.
Yeah, it's good to hear. And let's go to having problems keeping up with all the questions and getting them put down. Um, So Marimba says, I applied for a position. Surprisingly, I have dreamt of happy interaction with the CEO. I have never met him in my life, but one dream he was in my house, and in the second he watched me from his office. He was all smiles. The dream, all smiles in the dream. Well, no interview yet.
But it sounds very positive, doesn't it? It sounds very positive. Now, it's interesting, I used to have a business career, and I used to fly around the world to different business meetings. And
In an airplane, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I had experiences like she's describing, where I would be due to go to a business meeting, and I would dream the event, and I would meet the people that I'd never met before in my dream. And then I'd go to the event, and lo and behold, there they were. So it sounds like an auspicious dream, and I hope you get the interview. But remember what I said, um it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a slam dunk and absolutely you're going to get the job, but I think it's a very good sign.
Seems like that to
So
me.
I don't like to say premonitions are like 100%, because remember what I said about probabilities, potentials.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Leslie. So we have Dan's comment about dreaming about you last night.
I'd
And
like
we
to know
have,
what I was doing.
yeah.
Planting garlic. That's
Okay.
an
Now
in
we
joke because Dan's our neighbor, and he plants garlic.
wonderful garlic. It's amazing stuff. And so we have a question from, I'm going to use the word Cam because I think it's Kamini. And she says, I'm trying to use and awaken my clairs. Maybe you can give her a quick hint.
Well, same thing as I said to Letitia, is there is a foundation of energy techniques that can help you get from A to B. And the first thing that I teach anybody is grounding. And the second thing I teach anybody is centering. Those techniques are available on my website, and then go from there. And I always say it's important to start with clairvoyance in a way. That's why my Unlock Your Intuition course, which by the way starts this week, if anyone wants to take it, it's not too late, it starts this week. In that course, we lay down a foundation in clairvoyance. Why? Because when you have your sixth chakra, when you have your clairvoyance, you have your neutrality. And when you have your neutrality, that gives you a lot. And that gives you a foundation for exploring the other psychic abilities. Because the sixth chakra and the clairvoyance is the one that, when you know how to use it correctly, you are able to be neutral, you are able to be non-judgmental, you are able to see what is and accept it. And that's what we always want to do when we start opening up and we start to become more aware of ourselves and other people. We certainly don't want to pour judgment over the top of it, or emotionality over the top of it, or intellectualization over the top of it, or any number of other things that we could add into the mix. The sixth chakra gives you a perspective above and beyond all of those things that I just mentioned. So if anyone's asking me which Claire course they should take, because often after people have done Unlock Your Intuition, they go on to do one of the Claire courses, then if they're not sure, I say do the clairvoyance course and then tackle everything else, because it's a really important step in your spiritual development to have the use of your third eye and your sixth chakra.
Letitia says, is that related to the vortex Abraham Hicks talks about?
No. Well, the vortex that Abraham, well, maybe she was asking that about something I said earlier.
Okay.
So I think it relates to something I said earlier. So maybe you got the question out of sequence there. But so the vortex is basically, so I'm saying everything exists. And what Abraham is saying with the vortex is you have your personal vortex of things that you want, things that you wish for, your spiritual escrow, like your spiritual bank account. And everything that you could ever want or wish for, everything that you need to fulfill your life purpose is present within your vortex. It's there for you already. The trick is, how do you get it into the body? How do you manifest it into physical reality? And you know, the secret to that, the main secret to that is be grounded and actually be grounded and centered. Because if you're grounded, then all of that energy that's out here can now be flowing through you and through the system into the physical world. And if you're centered, you can steer the ship, right? You can consciously steer the ship. So I would say that Abraham Hicks and the vortex is related to what I was talking about earlier in terms of the potential futures that you can manifest for yourself.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Leslie. I have to go back to a question from Dina. I'm sorry, I skipped over it. And Dina, that was my mother's nickname. And she says, dreams talk, she talks about dreams talk to loved ones who have passed on. She has dreams talking to loved ones who have passed on.
Yeah, very cool. And there's so many amazing experiences we can have in our dream state, and that's one of them. We can communicate with loved ones who've passed over, who haven't passed over, even with a past or future version of ourselves, or even with a past or future lifetime. So there's some amazing things that happen when you extricate yourself from the limits of time and space.
Okay. And just so everybody knows, I've put the link to those meditations on both YouTube and on the Facebook pages.
And I would also encourage, maybe you can post the Unlock Your Intuition link as well to the chat room, because as I said, that course begins this week. And if you really want to have accelerate your psychic development and build a really strong foundation of energy techniques and how to use them, including how to use them to clear your blocks, then the Unlock Your Intuition course is a fantastic way to go.
Okay.
Also is my book, Intuition and Chakras.
Yes. So we have a question from Natasha. Natasha says, I had a dream where my niece, she's 4 years old now, was there 2 years before she was born. She looked 3 or 4 years old, and my dad was there and he had already passed on. My mom was there and 2 kids, and they're all alive. Quite the juxtaposition. So I just recently realized that that dream was multidimensional because time was definitely not a factor. Really amazing dream for me.
Yeah, very cool. And thanks for sharing that, Natasha. And yes, um, it's quite common for especially mothers to dream of their unborn children. And for that little personality and intention of who they're going to be sort of formulated before they even, um, come through into the physical world. So I get, well, not so much recently, but I used to get a lot of pregnant people wanting to tune into the spirit of their unborn child. And that's kind of a fun thing to be able to do.
Yeah. Well, before we go on our break, Dan said he was dreaming about garlic and intuition. So I guess we can go for a break now, Dr. Leslie, and we'll have a couple of messages and we'll come right back.
All right. Listeners, thank you for tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth. We'll be back with you after this short break. Welcome back, listeners. You're tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
Hello.
On tonight's episode of Unlocking Your Truth, we've been talking about precognition, which is the ability to psychically tune into future time events, which is an ability conveyed through the 6th and 7th chakra. If you're wanting to learn how to do it within the body and from your conscious awareness, although we were also mentioning that it's quite common for people to have precognitive experiences when they are in their out of body state, in their dream state, for example. And there's been an absolute avalanche of questions tonight.
Oh, no kidding.
And so I would just say, there's a lot of information in my book, Intuition and Chakras, on precognition. So I'm happy to just steer you in that direction and answer your questions.
So, Dr. Leslie, what did you want me to put up? It was the intuition webinar or what?
Unlock Your Intuition course.
Oh, the course. Okay, I'll have to go find that. Okay, Nate says, should I view the universe as an external thing greater than myself, or am I essentially the universe?
It's not external to you. And so, let's say it this way. Yes, you are essentially the universe. Or if we could use the word universe, or we could use the word God, or we could use the word cosmic consciousness, the great all that is. So you are a spark of divine consciousness. You are an aspect of God. And so you have a unique perspective and position within the whole of all creation. And through the point of consciousness that you have access to the whole. So we would say you're not the great all that is. You're an aspect of it. But are you separate from the universe? Absolutely not. You are an intrinsic, essential part of it. Hope that answers your question.
Letitia says, I think it's referring to another answer you gave her. Why is it usually about unhappy events? And are there ever any happy ones?
Oh, premonitions. Yeah, it is more common. It is more common in all that scientific research that they've done. It's, well, somebody's going to die, somebody's going to have an accident, there's going to be a global disaster or an earthquake or this or that. So it is more common. It is more common for at least people to remember premonitions that are about negative events. And the information that just came to me is, I just wonder whether there's just a predisposition of human consciousness to hold on to that. Because I would believe that just as we have a choice when we're awake to choose high vibration happiness or lower vibration, difficulties and challenges, same thing when we're in the out of body state. So we can have marvelous, wonderful experiences in the out of body state as well. And I'm sure it's absolutely possible to have a premonition of positive future events. In actual fact, I personally would absolutely encourage people to visualize a potential future Earth, which is peaceful coexistence for all, for example. Because remember, we create our reality through the energy that we are. So which future time reality would you like to feed? The negative one or the positive one?
Good one. So it looks like we have a short break in the question. So just go right ahead. I'm going to look for George's question here that he asked.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about what's in my book. And actually, every psychic ability that's in the book, there's at least one example of somebody. And the one in the precognition chapter is a fabulous example. And it's a lady who used to work in the intelligence services, in the Canadian intelligence services. And after she retired, she started getting these amazing precognitive dreams, which were very accurate. And even, I think some of them were even waking visions. So one of them, she was watching the television and the newscaster announced something. And actually, the event hadn't happened yet, but somehow she got the information ahead of time, and it was true. So she had there was, I think, an attack in the Canadian Parliament that happened a few years ago. She precognized that before that happened, and then there was I think it was in Turkey, in a tourist resort, and she had this one was a dream, and she experienced herself as though she were people in that event. And so she experienced herself in different people's bodies experiencing this terror event. And then she later watched the news, and there were people who had been present in the terror event that were being interviewed. And the people that she'd been in the bodies of were on the television being interviewed about the event that had just happened. And so, you know, she was having all of these experiences, and she started telling people ahead of time that she trusted, just to validate that it was actually happening to her. And so, and it was. And her philosophy about why this was happening wasn't to say, well, I'm great and I'm the bee's knees and I'm this amazing person. What she said was, you know, I think it's so that I can help people understand that we are all one and we are all connected, you know, and I am you and you are me. And, you know, that person, the other side of the world that's going through this terrible experience is a part of the human family just as much as we might be in our privileged positions. So I thought that that was a really wonderful perspective that she had on her experiences.
True. So Curious Soul says, I can be very good at generating conspiracy theories when I'm in the low vibe or less love for myself.
Yes. And thank you for mentioning that, George, because that's really a hot topic, isn't it, at the moment? It's very easy for people to go down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole. And what I say is, feel your vibration when you're doing it. Because spend half an hour reading conspiracy theories on the internet, and I don't think you're going to be feeling better. I think your vibration will have spiraled down. And then ask yourself, how am I contributing to what's going on the planet? You're bringing yourself to match that low vibration, and therefore you're magnifying that by being the vibration of it. So far better to manage your vibration up. And again, I think it was Letitia's point. So we're talking a little bit Abraham Hicks here, you know, about you know, being the vibration of what you want to manifest. So it doesn't help to be in fear. It doesn't help to be in resistance. It doesn't help to be in judgment. That just perpetuates more fear and hate and judgment and all of those vibrations that you're sitting in. So best, you know, to talk about, was it Mirembe earlier? Her vision of a White House makes her feel happy. So what helps you move into a higher vibration and focus on that? You're on mute, Corey. You're on mute, Corey.
Yeah, but you're supposed to be able to press the space bar and it comes off of mute. Yeah, you know, like it's so easy to go into that negativity though. I find human nature has a tendency to try to go to the negative side before they try to go to the positive side, even though they want to be in the positive side. But that's all their, I think that's all their stuff that goes on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a chat with somebody today about that, who, no matter how many times I said it, he couldn't believe that he was responsible for his actions, like not his actions, but his outcomes. And he says, no, I don't, I can't create that stuff in my life. And he's right. He can't, if he believes he can't create it, well, he
Well,
can't create it.
well, really, what our reality is a big reflector. Why time and space, time gives us, it's basically a big reflector. Here I am in this moment, in this vibration, in this moment, and then I move into this direction and end up here in a future moment. This is a reflection back at that version of you to say, this is the result of the energy that you were. And it gives us the opportunity when things show up in our reality that we don't prefer to change our energy. Because when we change our energy, our reality shifts.
Yeah. Hence the old adage, hindsight has 20/20 vision. But it really does. But what I find neat about that, when you do that, when you go back to see where you landed up, what I find is what I've done in the past, and I think it's amazing, as I look at a negative event in my life and where that took me, and then the positive event that came from that negative event, and there's a it's almost like a
Yeah,
juxtaposition of how that happens. Like your negative events actually lead you to positive events.
because again, that's one of the um, aspects of our reality, polarity. You can only swing so far in one direction without the balance then having to be redressed.
So Letitia wants to know, off subject, how long should we do each meditation in your book before moving on to the next one?
And I would
She
just
says,
say,
sorry, iPad did update that apparently types what it wants as opposed to what she wants. So
so,
this might be a question from iPad. I'm not sure.
so I would say that when you feel comfortable, move on to the next technique, and that might be different for different people. But you can also, for example, I might, if somebody comes to me for a mentoring session, I might teach them grounding, centering, and another technique all within the space of an hour, and then get them to go away and practice that. And so I would say, take your time over it, really feel what it is to be grounded, make grounding second nature, add in the centering, use them together, and then layer the other techniques on top. So certainly I hope that you're not meaning that you think, well, I do grounding, I've done that, forget that, now I'm going to do centering, okay, done that, forget that, now I'm going to move on to the next one. Because these are things that you're layering one on top of the other, that you are then combining as a practice all together. So I would say that you could learn about them all very quickly, but the goal is to be doing all of them simultaneously.
Yeah. It's actually something, the grounding meditation I find is something that you can do. Um, it's something you can do anywhere, anytime. Once you get the hang of it, you can just sort of, like, if you're sitting at your office and you're typing, you can actually, in the back of your mind, you can ground. Just allow it to ground, just be there. It doesn't have to
Right.
be something that you have to spend a specific amount of time on. It's good to spend time on it, but it's something that you can do quickly. You don't have to go into the om state. You can actually
Well,
just sit
when
there.
you say quickly, it's not like quick grounding gone.
No, no, no.
Yeah, I spoke to a lady this week, and she was wanting advice on her psychic abilities, and she had the book, or she downloaded the free meditation, and I said, you've got it all going on, but it's just not embodied. um, are you grounding? Oh, well, I ground once a week.
Whether I
No,
need it or not.
no, it ain't going to work. You've got to ground on a consistent basis. At least, at least once a day, doing a meditation for half an hour to an hour. And then, as Corey says, don't just drop the grounding when you stop meditating. Continue being grounded, because
Yeah.
that's what's going to help you embody your spiritual abilities by being grounded. You won't embody anything if you're not grounded. You won't
What's
manifest your dreams if you're not grounded.
Yeah, and it's not just that woo stuff either. It's actually a physical. There's physical attributes to grounding as well.
Well, it makes it safe for all that high vibration energy to flow through the physical system. It gives you the opportunity to heal the physical system because you can release heavier, denser, unhelpful energies from your body down your grounding.
Yeah. And it says qigong is a good way to do that. I have a certificate in teach as a teacher of qigong, and it takes time. It takes time to get to that point, but the grounding exercise Dr. Leslie has is almost instantaneous. Like it doesn't take a lot of learning and time. And we have a question from Brian, or more of a statement. And Brian says, I believe it's been proven our brains have a negative bias, the old survival instincts. Negative stuff sticks and positive kind of bounces off easier. Definitely, Brian, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
seems to be one of the huge lessons of being in a human body.
Well, it's the mind, the intellect, and the ego and the intellect. The ego, like Eckhart Tolle said it, right? I always find it interesting. If I go black, my mind will go white. If I go white, my mind will go black. It just likes to go to the opposite extreme. And now, unfortunately, Dr. Leslie, that was an amazing show. Barely took a breath, and it's over. And we got some great. Uh, Cam says, loving the advice, and she says, I agree. And she's talking about qigong. Well, that was
And
amazing.
yeah, and I'd just say suggestions and guidance. I would never tell anybody what to do. I'm sharing from my experience, and obviously, always just take away what works for you.
Definitely.
Although I know that the techniques I teach really do work. Okay, we got to go. Thank you so much, everyone who's joined the show live or who's listening later on the radio show and podcast. We'll be back next Tuesday at 7 o'clock Pacific time.
And next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about psychometry.
Are we?
Yes,
Sounds
telling
exciting.
things like the past off of an object by touch.
How
Bye,
exciting.
folks.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.